The insult landed first, sharp and careless. "Pathetic," one voice jeered. "She really thinks that mark makes her tough." A burst of laughter followed, bouncing off the cafe's tiled walls. The woman they mocked sat rigid at a small table, her coffee cooling untouched. She wore no uniform, no medals, just a worn hoodie pushed back at the wrist, where ink had surfaced in the light. It was a simple tattoo, stark black lines forming a military insignia. Not trendy, not stylish. To strangers, it was nothing but a mistake etched into skin. But to her, it was sacred. She didn't flinch. She didn't argue. Her silence only seemed to encourage them. Across the cafe, heads turned, and yet no one intervened. The room was full of people who pretended not to hear cruelty when it was loudest. And then a chair scraped back, not hers. From the far corner, a man rose with the steady bearing of someone who had carried more than his share of weight. Broad-shouldered, his presence commanded attention without a word. He began walking forward, removing his jacket with deliberate calm. When the sleeve rolled back, the laughter faltered, because on his arm was the same tattoo, aged, scarred, but unmistakable. The cafe went silent. Her name was Evelyn Hayes. Once, she had been a Marine combat medic. She joined at 19, with fire in her chest and a heart that beat too quickly for the small town that doubted her. The desert had tested her. Dust storms filled her lungs, gunfire tore the air, and every day was a gamble between life and death. But the worst moments weren't her own wounds. They were the men she couldn't save. She remembered one night most vividly the cries in the sand, the smell of iron, the heat of blood seeping through her gloves. She had worked until her arms shook, until her vision blurred, but 3 of her brothers never made it back. That night, under the dim glow of a field lamp, she and her unit etched the same insignia into their skin, a promise to remember. The lines weren't perfect, the ink bled, but it wasn't for beauty. It was for memory, for loyalty, for the dead who lived on through them. Now, years later, Evelyn carried that tattoo like a gravestone she couldn't put down. It was her shield, her scar, her story. The students who mocked her couldn't know. They saw a piece of ink, not a battlefield. They saw a quiet woman, not a survivor. Their laughter filled the air, but behind it was ignorance, not strength. The bystanders said nothing. That was the cruelest part. People sipped their coffee, lowered their eyes, let disrespect slide by, because it was easier to avoid discomfort than to speak up. Evelyn stayed silent too, but her silence was different. Hers wasn't fear, it was discipline. A Marine's kind of silence. And then came Colonel James Rourke. He moved with unhurried certainty, like someone who had nothing to prove. As he slipped his jacket from his shoulders, the reveal was quiet but thunderous. His forearm carried the same insignia, only older, its edges blurred by time, the skin puckered with the marks of shrapnel. The cafe felt it instantly. This was no coincidence. This was fraternity. The laughter choked and died. He stopped at Evelyn's table. He didn't raise his voice, didn't shout anyone down. He simply rested a hand on the back of her chair, his gaze sweeping the room. "This mark," he said evenly, "isn't decoration. It's a memorial. Every line stands for blood spilled by men and women who never came home." No one moved. No one dared breathe too loud. Then he looked at the mockers directly. His voice softened, but the weight of it pressed like stone. "You laugh at that tattoo, you laugh at the dead, and if that doesn't shame you, nothing ever will." The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. A ripple stirred through the cafe. Someone near the counter rose quietly, standing in place. Another followed, then another. No applause, no noise. Just a rising wall of silence, strangers standing in solidarity. The mockers sat frozen, cheeks flushed with humiliation. For them, this was a lesson they hadn't asked for, but one they would never forget. Evelyn's chest tightened. For years she had carried that ink as a lonely burden, hiding it beneath sleeves and shadows. Now, as she glanced at Colonel Rourke's scarred forearm beside hers, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: pride. Before leaving, the colonel gave her a nod, just a fraction, but enough. And then, to the room at large, he left words that would echo long after the door closed behind him. Respect is the quiet we owe the fallen. If you can't give that, you don't deserve the freedom they bought for you. No one answered. No one needed to. Evelyn gathered her things slowly. This time, she didn't tug her sleeve back down. She walked out with the tattoo uncovered, the autumn air cool on her skin, the silence of respect trailing behind her like a guard of honor. Scars, ink, memories. They all tell stories too deep for the uninitiated to understand. But the truth is simple. Some tattoos aren't fashion. They're gravestones carved into living flesh. So the next time you see one, pause before you laugh. You might be looking at the last gift of the fallen. And to everyone watching, where are you joining us from? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories that honor those who carry unseen battles with unshakable dignity.